Hi, welcome to People's Perspective. I'm Dan Svoboda. Tonight my guest will be Brian the Whipping Boy, who is a radio personality on 94.7 The Zone, and he will be talking to us about his career in the radio business. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, first of all, that was well done. Well done.
Thank you.
I'm serious. Well done.
Thanks.
Better than I could have done.
Thank you.
Because you're a TV guy.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what all radio guys wish they were. But then at some point we just give up and just basically wait to die.
Die lonely.
Yeah.
Poor lonely.
Well, I don't know about lonely. I mean, yeah, well, a lot of radio people are lonely anyway. And then they die lonely, I'm sure.
So, speaking of radio, where'd you get your interest in radio? Did you start in college or high school?
Well, I was interested in radio literally since I was a little kid. I mean, I used to, and everything I say in a high school makes me feel so old, because I'm 31 years old. I didn't used to be 31, but, you know, every day we get older.
Yeah.
And then I come to a high school, I realize how old I really am. But I started listening to radio back in, like, the late 70s when I was like 5 or 6 years old, maybe even younger than that. And I remember WLS and Larry Lujak and Tommy Edwards and these guys that I guarantee never heard of. But anyway, so I was really into radio then. I mean, I always loved music. I liked personalities. I liked radio shows and all that. And I kind of always wanted to be in broadcasting in some way, shape, or form. I wanted to either be a DJ or maybe a sports announcer or like a play-by-play broadcaster would be my ideal thing. But yeah, I had all those sort of options in my head. Didn't really do anything toward that except in high school, we didn't have all this cool stuff that you guys have here, which, by the way, you guys have an awesome facility as far as I can tell. I'm jealous. I'm jealous that I never had this in high school. But I joined speech team and did theater instead. So we had this event and speech team called Radio Speaking. So that's where I was always told, by the way, that I talked way too fast, which is, you know, some people, it just happens, you know? But anyway, this is a long story long. You're not even going to get to ask a second question because I just can't shut up. So then in college, I studied broadcast journalism, and I was on the radio there at U of I, and that was that.
So what was your inspiration to just go for it?
Well, I see. I mean, like, I think it was something that I thought I was decent at and also was pretty easy. And so I thought I looked at these people who had these careers in like broadcasting, and I thought to myself, well, you know, if they're good at it, it's probably pretty easy for them and not a very difficult way to make a pretty good living and have a lot of fun at your living and not have like a normal, boring sort of 9-to-5 job. And all that stuff turns out to be true. The downside is that people get fired a lot for things that are out of their control.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of radio people are just frustrated because they aren't in TV or something. And I'm only kidding that I'm one of them. I really I don't have any desires to be in TV. I really don't. But anyway, not that I would turn it down or something. But it's not like I'm like, you know, every time there's a TV job, I wish I had nothing like that. But anyway.
So what were your first jobs in radio before you were at 94.7?
Let me see. I worked at the station in Champaign, which is called WPGU, which is actually kind of cool. Because most college stations are very like free form and you can do whatever you want and no one really pays attention and it's not like it doesn't really prepare you very much for like a real radio job. Because in real radio, at least most of the time, you know, you've got commercials and you've got music logs that tell you what to play and you've got all these things you have to do. But at the station in Champaign, which is all staffed by students at U of I, they do it the same way. So it's like student run, but at the same time they sell commercial time and they do and they have music playlists and all these things that a real station has. And so anyway, so working there got me prepared to work at Q101, which is what I did between my sophomore and junior years of college. I was an intern at Q101 doing promotions and blah, blah, blah. You pass stuff out, you hand out stickers, you get screamed at by crazy like Nine Inch Nails fans who wish the band wouldn't have sold out, stuff like that, and they blame you. And anyway, from that, they needed some people to do some overnight shifts and stuff, and then I was perfectly willing to do that for like my $6 an hour or whatever, and hey, and there it was. And the next thing you know, I was doing traffic on a morning show, then I was doing news on a morning show, and then I was doing nights, and then I was doing weird man-cow stuff for a few years, and now I'm doing this.
Cool. Now, Brian the Whipping Boy, that's a very unusual name. How did you get it?
Well, I think it was like this, although I was never officially told the real story by my boss, who, by the way, is my boss now and was my boss at Q101 back when I first started. I've had a few in between, but it's weird because it's sort of come full circle a little bit. I believe, when I was like 19 years old, that's when I was first on the air, so I was kind of a kid. It doesn't seem like a kid to you, but in the real like outside world, that's a kid. and he heard that some station in Los Angeles, which was big in the alternative format, and I think they are still, K-Rock, they might still be big, but they were really big then. Q101 was kind of ripping them off because no one in Chicago knew them, so you can rip people off that way and it's okay. So he wanted to get a guy from that station whose name was Whipping Boy, because they have all wacky names out there. Everybody's name is, they have Jed the Fish and all these guys, and that's their name. So he wanted to hire this guy Whipping Boy, allegedly, but then the guy didn't turn out to be the guy. He didn't like him. So he brought him to town, didn't like him, didn't hire him, but then instead stole his name and gave it to me. And then I was Whipping Boy. And for a few years I was just Whipping Boy, and then I turned into Brian the Whipping Boy because it's my real name. That's it.
So what?
I wish there was a better story. Everybody asked me, and I've been trying to come up with a better one for like 11 years, but I figured that maybe I'll actually shed the name one of these days instead of coming up with a good story, because I just haven't.
So what is it like to be a radio personality in Chicago?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know because I do it all the time, but I don't really know anything else now. You know, I've been doing that, and now, like I said, I'm 31, so I started when I was 19, so I've been doing that like my whole adult life, literally. So, I mean, I guess it's great. I mean, if I wasn't doing that, I know I would want to be doing that. It's great. You got a lot of listeners. You got a lot of people who know who you are. When I was on the Man Cow thing for a few years, that was the craziest thing I'm sure that I'll ever experience in my life. Just the insane people that you meet all the time, like that you work with, for one thing. But second of all, that you meet listeners, they're just crazy, but they're dedicated and loyal, and they know you and they like or hate you, and it's nuts. But for me, as far as Chicago goes, my whole family is here, so they can listen, and that's cool. And even if I don't talk to them for a few days, it's kind of like I did because they heard me on the radio, so that saves me a conversation or two. So it's a lot of fun.
So when you got at 94.7, did you choose that, or did they choose you, or how did you get there?
I was working at Man Cow for a few years, and that was a little weird, and it wasn't that much fun, to tell you. I mean, some parts of it were a lot of fun. I have to admit that, but then some parts of it really stank, because it's not for everybody on that show except for Man Cow. There's a crew of like 8 guys, 8 people, 1 girl, mostly guys. For most of them, it's not very much fun because it's all about him. It's all like centered on him. So if it doesn't benefit him, then everyone else sort of feels the brunt. So everyone pretty much wants to quit that show from the minute they get there. And if they can, they do. And so after a few years, when my old boss, the guy that hired me at Q101 originally, went to ABC Radio, which is 94.7, and he called me up, and they were going to change the format of the station from like 80s or whatever they were doing into something that we're sort of doing now. He figured I'd be a good fit. He knew me. He called me up, and I quit and came over here. And so when I first started on 94.7, we were doing like alternative music, but then we sort of went harder, and now we're playing Slipknot and all that stuff, and there we are. See, I talk fast too.
Yeah. So can you describe a typical day for us?
Sure. Well, I get up. We start at 5, and so I get up at I set my alarm at like 2:56.
Ick.
Yeah, and the 2:56 is no real significance. It's just that I always feel like I can then snooze till about like 3:13 or something like that, and I'll be okay.
Trick.
Yeah, right. But I don't want to I don't want to make it 3. I want to make it in the 2 o'clock hour, so I feel like it's early enough. I don't know. I had some reason. I don't even remember what the reason is anymore, but I started doing it, and I don't want to change now because I'm afraid I'll oversleep. So then I get there, and I go through some prep and stuff like that, morning stories and that kind of thing, and look at the newspapers if they get there on time, which usually they do a little bit before we start. And then we do the show from 5 to 9. A lot of times we have interviews to tape afterwards because sometimes people don't want to get up that early or whatever. If they're on the West Coast. Yeah, imagine. Or if they're on the West Coast, even 9 o'clock our time when we get off is still only 7 o'clock there. So, we have to do them later. Anyway, so a lot of times we do interviews after the show. We have a meeting, and then we're pretty much done. And then on the side, I do like commercial voiceover work and stuff for TV and or radio. That's really just very random. It's like I do auditions all the time, so that takes up a lot of time. Sometimes I get work, sometimes mostly I don't, but I think it's just how it goes. And then I go to sleep, and then I get up with the next day.
Sleep is good.
Yeah. So.
All right, well, thanks for joining me on the show today.
That's it.
And thank you for watching. I'm Dan Svoboda for People in Perspective. See you next time.